Welcome to Our Soul Whisper with Cathi Belmont and co-host Dr. Pat, a sacred space for self-discovery, healing, and transformation. At the heart of Our Soul Whisper is the sacred truth. When we pause and listen inward, the soul always speaks. This show offers a safe, empowering space where those whispers are heard, honored, and lovingly guided into full expression. Each episode invites you to be curious about yourself and the reality you're in, while gently reminding you that you are exactly where you need to be. Let today's message settle in your heart. Maybe even journal about it. And if something resonates, peace, clarity, or insight, pass it along to someone whose soul might be calling for the same. Keep listening inward. Your soul knows the way. Our Soul Whisper starts now. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Pat, and I get to take this journey with the most incredible coach, Cathi Belmont. And today's episode is going to tell you just why that is. So when you're out there looking for people to help you in life, you really want somebody that has gone through things, that knows how to translate those things that we go through into everyday life so that we can help people. And let me just tell you, if you are a certified coach like Cathi is, you have gone through all you need to do to step up and help people. Today, get ready for this. When helping others goes too far, how it impacts you and those you love. Cathi, yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think the title says it all. Hello, everyone, and thanks for being here. Yeah, helping others. For this episode, I specifically used the word helping because it's really going to lead us into what that is. And helping tends to have this feel of aiding or rescuing in a sense. And when maybe we look at assisting or partnering or lending a hand, that has a different feel, more of a kind of a word working together mode. So the helping really leads us into, where are we helping and coming from this rescuing modality or this mindset? And it can lead us into words that maybe we've heard or haven't heard, codependency and enabling. And so codependency is really this pattern to where someone else's emotions, outcome, their needs is more important than your own. And that's the focus.
Yeah.
And when you're codependent, your needs, your life goes on the back burner. It becomes the other person's. And, you can look at, what's underneath fostering this relationship where it becomes so one-sided. And we'll look at that. Again, it's with this codependency, your worth can be tied and linked to helping someone or making their own needs more important. And so a lot of times it can be trying to be in control of something that feels like so out of control.
Yeah.
And so enabling is what the codependent does. They make excuses for the person. And I think I'll kind of get into two layers here because, coming from a recovery background, I can get right into,
You and me both.
It's associated with addiction and all that. And while that's how I learned about it, we're also going to talk about how it can show up in everyday relationships, where even if you're not either have had an addiction or was in a family of or an environment of, I think we can still see that in everyday relationships.
Yeah. And Cathi, it's starting to show up in the workplace more now than it ever has. And I hope we get to just mention that a little bit because I want to ask you this question as you keep moving forward. I want to ask you about the patterns. I know we talked about addiction and recovery, which you and I are extremely familiar with. The toughest thing that anybody could say to you as an active addict is, geez, I can't give you that money anymore. But you're talking about patterns that a person develops I want to ask you, I don't know if you're in the pattern of being this, if you can switch it on and off. What do you think? What are the patterns like?
You know, when you asked if we can switch it on and off, I think it's more of a becoming aware of and
Mm,
changing beliefs around it and really looking at yourself because again, it can come from that worthiness place. Um, I know growing up, I kind of learned to look outside myself. And so what that turned into was everyone else is more important. Their needs, what they say, how they feel, more important than mine. So I learned to kind of be quiet, settle in, find my place. And as I had relationships, that turned into me needing some control. And so that turned into me, okay, well, let me just do this. Let me just do it because I know how to do it right. And so in my life, I've found that those patterns just didn't work anymore. And they really just made me miserable. And it just created some things that I just was like, no. And so it really forced me to look at how do I want to live in my spiritual path helped me with that mindset as well. So I think they're patterns to become aware of. And as we're aware of them, we can say, and then going back to what's the intention, what's the feeling
hmm
behind that? If something happens and you feel like you want to take over, that's the moment that life is saying to you, okay, what's going on inside? Stop and see, are you scared? What's going to happen? Is
hmm
a pan going to fly? Or what's going to happen? And so that's an opportunity that life's giving you to say, okay, let's look inside and see what's going on. And that's
hmm
what stops the pattern. I think we have to find ways to improve, but really, life gives us those opportunities all the time. So that's how I would answer that question.
Yeah.
And I think as it becomes aware,
Mhm.
maybe that light switch can become a dimmer to where it's
Yeah.
not so black and white.
So what are the drivers? I know fear is around some of this. Let's talk about some of the drivers that are associated with this. And I think for this conversation, what I would like to keep out of the conversation today is the codependent relationship with the narcissist, because we can do a whole show on that,
Oh, yeah.
right? But there are drivers and they're fear-based drivers, aren't they?
They are fear-based drivers. It's really kind of what comes up, and that's kind of what turns into, I think what come up are fear and control. And so
Mhm.
that's where you want to make excuses or you want to step in and just somehow maybe justify someone else's behavior because it's making you feel uncomfortable. Or you want some sense of um, keeping the peace, don't rocking the boat. That's why you have people ignoring what's going on or covering it up. And so when we have those patterns, it's coming from that place. I'm going to go down to, I mean, fear, I think, is the bottom level. I think you have fear and love. So you can have a lot of different interpretations of fear, control being one of them. And, there is you know, I don't want to discard that there's a love there and there is a help, but what we're going to get into as well is what it costs each of us. It costs the person who's codependent and it costs the
Yeah.
person that we're helping or enabling
Mm,
to continue on with a behavior um, that's just going to keep going if we kind of don't stop it. And
yeah.
so the costs become very real. And so I think,
Yeah.
important
Oh,
awareness to become a part of.
so I want to ask you about your experience. What have you seen about the costs? What does it cost you? Now, I know I work with a lot of business women, and I will tell you, I'm seeing what it's costing them. However, I'm going to put a little caveat on it. Without working with someone, in this case, they're my clients, you have your clients, it's not that easy to see. because the pattern becomes normalized. No? So, what are the costs associated with this? When we say it costs you, I don't think the
Yeah.
audience has a sense of what you and I are really
Yeah.
talking about here.
Right. Yeah. When you get into this cost and payoff, it can be challenging to see for sure. So if you're overextending, if you are making your needs less important than someone else's, if you're more invested in the outcome of someone else, that disconnects you from you. That gets you further away. And to be honest, it can be exhausting trying to manage someone else's life, let alone your own. And then you tend to stay in relationships that aren't really working. They can be one-sided, you can feel 100 different things as far as this just doesn't feel right, but you don't know where to go. Maybe you think it's the only thing that's there to support you. As far as the other person, what you're costing them, what you're denying them is their chance to grow and their chance to see where their consequences are going to lead them. You may say, no, I'm going to step in and let me just help you out here. Or, no, let me do this. But if you're stopping them if you don't allow them to try, because they're like, you're not giving them the opportunity to stretch and see, can I even do this? And again, you're removing those natural consequences of, say, someone's in a position where they might lose a job, or they're in the workplace, there might be some sort of kind of negative consequence. Allowing that to play out, and that might just be the catalyst for someone to say, oh my gosh, maybe I need to look at that here. Maybe not, but maybe, we don't know. So if we take that opportunity away from someone, it's not helping either one of us. So, and then you interrupt that self-trust. And I think what's really important is in doing this, we send these messages, either spoken or unspoken, to the person where we say, I really don't trust you to handle this. And you
Mm,
can't do this without me. And when I say those words, gosh, um, they're very powerful. And to express that to someone, imagine the impact and imagine the cost
yeah,
that it's something that's being taken away or not giving them the opportunity to really do what they need to do with it.
yeah. Gosh, there's so many lessons here. However, this is a journey and it is a spiritual journey for me. It was for me to understand this because it's trusting yourself enough to trust the other person. And I know there's a little layer of control. And there are some people, if you have grown up in an abusive situation, or you've grown up as the head of the family and had to take care of your young siblings, you have this protective thing that goes on. And then
Mhm.
you grow up as an adult and it doesn't look so good, right? Do you see what I'm saying?
I
So,
do, yeah.
what is it that you see, and how do you embed this to help with this in spiritual life coaching?
Well, what it is, it's really just moving from this, I'm going to fix you, I'm going to take care of everything, I feel responsible. It's hard for me to see you struggle, to, I trust that you got this. And understanding that struggle or challenge or tough times is part of growth. I mean, we all go through that in our own way. And I think the listeners and all of us can see a moment in our lives where we're like, gosh, I went through that and I tried that and it was scary as all heck. And wow, look what it did. Look what I learned from that, or look what I got from that. Or even if you look back 5 years, that sometimes these challenges can be very subtle, but if we look back and say, oh my gosh, look where I am right now, or just a simple, I'm not responding or reacting to that anymore. That used to make me I'll tell you a story, and if I'm my brother and sister listening, they would say something to me, and I would just break down crying. I mean, it was just, and so when I look back now, and we have our sibling, two older brother and sister, we have our conversations now, and I'm just like, yep, I'm standing in this. I'm right in the middle of it. So that's an example that I can really show the listeners of how I've grown and moved into it. And
Mm.
so in my coaching, I bring that in and I understand what it takes for the person to move through what they need to move through. I've had sessions where there's been 2 to 3 minutes of silence.
Mm.
And that's when the person says, oh, I get it. And that's as a coach, you learn to be comfortable with silence. And
Yeah.
that's where the breakthroughs or just those moments can come. And so in saying that, it's really clarifying what's yours and what isn't to take on. Really starting to become aware enough and courageous enough to ask yourself questions. Is this really mine to take on? And
Yeah.
why do I feel this need to take it on? Is it coming from a place of I really want to give it, no expectations, I'm moving on with my day? Or are you giving it and then still worrying about how it's all going to work out? And then really what can be a challenge for all of us is, separating our emotions from somebody else. Is this mine or not? And it's again, learning that muscle and just tuning in to see what's yours and what's not.
A long time ago, we had the Access Consciousness people do regular series with us. They were on the network for I don't know how long, before it actually was a network. And I remember Glenna Rice, who was co-hosting with me, and she would remind me of doing one thing, Cathi, one thing, and I do it to this day. Not perfectly, just going to say, but she says, when you're facing a situation, does it feel light? If it doesn't feel light, it doesn't belong to you.
Mhm.
Does it feel light? Now,
Mhm.
we know if we have a codependent tendency, even when it doesn't feel light, it's hard to break the pattern of not doing it anyway, right? Wouldn't you say?
I would say, and it's noticing in that moment, okay, this feels kind of heavy. What's going on?
Yeah.
It's those simple questions that if you're really willing to just dig in and be courageous and say, I want my life to look differently. It's the mindset. I mean, that's where it is. And it can get jumbled up in all these different facades and costumes and everything, but it really comes down to asking ourselves those questions in that moment, Dr. Pat.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on that this feels so heavy? And stop and ask yourself, or if you're at work, you
Mm-hmm.
know, take a restroom break
Yeah.
and take 5 minutes and sit there and say, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
Or take some deep breaths until you can then really make an appointment with yourself. Okay, this
Yeah.
isn't a time where I can do this. I'm going to go home tonight and do what I need to do to see what's going on.
Yeah.
And that's where coaching can really support you because it keeps you in those questions. It keeps that awareness. What's going on? What's going on in your body? When you say that, can you feel that heaviness? Where do you feel the lightness? Ooh, I just felt that release. It's learning to feel that energy. It's even getting familiar with, does it feel light or heavy?
Yeah.
Are people at that point where they can really tune into that? So it's being aware. And
You know, I
and we don't have to be perfect,
mm,
but it's catching it
mm-hmm.
at the
I,
times when we notice.
I want to ask you about doing this and separating this with family members. I don't know why I'm asking you that question, but
Okay.
a lot of times in the workplace, it's very clear when we're doing stuff we don't want to do. I mean, it is clear, right? You have to get 5 million babysitters to watch because your boss at the last hour said you're not going to leave here until you finish the report. Okay. Um, but when it comes to family, I'm not sure why that becomes more difficult. Even if you're in a family situation where your family is just not treating you right, but you have always been there for them, and you just don't know how to look at this from a safe and healthy boundary. Is it harder to do this with families?
You know, I think it can. I actually have a friend who's going through this with a sibling, and there's some kind of medical issues there. But it's really, that's when it's digging in, and if you're
Mm,
willing to say, what can I do here and what can I do? And this is a situation where it'd be very easy to go in and do everything and save and rescue. However, they've found that they have to do more of that support in the background.
wow.
And so they feel like, okay, it gives them a sense of, okay, I can't cross this boundary because I'm getting a clear no. However,
Mm,
I want to support, and how can I do that? And so, we can, that's something that, a client and I would get into and really delve into,
mm,
but that's kind of a high level. As far as with my family, I've learned with, especially my siblings, I've learned a lot through trial and error of, I would always get in the middle of stuff and say, oh, well, this, oh, this person, and I wasn't respecting boundaries. And I got into a lot of trouble with that. And I learned really quickly that I don't want to do that. Uh, because as I learn and grow, I know that my boundaries are very important. So my relationship with my family is really so much more fun now because I have the strength and the courage to say, you know what? I feel like I'm getting in the middle here and I may need to delay this conversation until I have others. So
mm,
it's making those decisions for yourself. I can, so that's why it's being aware and it's saying, do I really want to do this?
mhm,
And having that worth and that trust in yourself to say, I'm going to delay this for a few minutes or give me a day to think about it. And there's no perfection in it. It's a growth and it's an awareness, and we each reach these different levels and it looks different for everyone. That's why I think we can, you know, there's this oneness out there and we all have our different things and we can all relate, I think, on some level. However, it's very different for each of us and we're all in our very different place of journey. So that's where there can certainly be no judgment. And seeing where that person is, it really is perfect. It's their place, it's their journey. And that's what I respect so much and what
yeah,
I'm with clients and just where are they? And I meet them where they
yeah,
are and ask, and
yeah. It's a really reverse version of this I want to chat about. I know we have a few minutes left, but I want to bring this home because you have to integrate spiritual insight with action. And here's another way it shows up. We're talking about there's two sides to the codependent coin, right? There's the one where you are giving, giving, giving. And then there's the flip side of it, where, let me give you an example, where you say to a family member, I think I'm going to get a tattoo. This is for real. And they are like, oh my God, are you crazy? Your skin's going to shrivel up and you're going to look like, whatever you're going to get, look like a monster in a year. Okay, you get that. That's even, I think, sometimes harder. It's another version of codependence, right? And the question is, I know my family member, why did I do that? And remember the expression, ask permission later? And the reason I'm bringing it up is we also have to be aware of how multidimensional codependence is, correct?
it is. And it's really kind of, when you're asked that question, say from a family member, so why do you want to get that tattoo? One, you can see how you feel when that question is asked. And that's something that I would ask someone. Well, how did you feel when that question was asked?
Exactly.
And they'll say what they say. And what would you like to say in that situation? And see how that feels. And that's where the empowerment comes in.
Yeah.
You know, you can hear, well, this is how it feels. Get in touch with that and acknowledge that and say, all right, well, what do you want to say? How do you want to respond? How important is that tattoo to you? And then, you know, so it's that exploration. And it's really, I'm there as a guide. I have no agenda. It's really wherever that person
Yeah.
wants to go. It's, well, I'm not ready to. Okay.
Yeah.
You
You're a
know,
much better
so
coach than I am, Cathi. I'm just going to say, because you're a much better coach. Because, my immediate response is, why in the world did you even mention it to this person? They're
uh,
ultra conservative, right?
yeah,
But you have to have a conversation with somebody, because that's the tip of the iceberg. There's
yeah,
more underneath there. I want
yeah.
to take a minute.
Hmm.
How do people work with you? Because we're talking about things that I have found in my life I could not do alone. So can you give out some of your information, and what's your closing message?
Yeah. So everyone, you can just find me at OurSoulWhisper.com. That's my website. You'll find everything there. And if you want to send me an email, OurSoulWhisper@gmail.com. You know, if you're interested in this topic, or if there's something more that you really want to
Mm-hmm.
learn more about, if there's some past ones that we've done that you want to dig into a
Mm-hmm.
little deeper, or something that you really want to know about, learn more about, please email me. I'll be happy to consider that. And, you know, as far as my key takeaway, I just want to say that love is really trusting others to live their own lives. That just really sums it up.
Yeah.
And that in between is where we get to discover ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a powerful topic. I want to thank you for taking it on. We touched upon recovery. Perhaps one day you and I will do a full hour show on addiction and recovery on my show, if you'll join me. And we'll talk
Awesome.
about all the patterns that show up, and how now, with coming out of the bag and have access to online, which never before COVID were we allowed to do, is now opening up new possibilities. I want to thank you for
Yeah.
taking on a topic that is so seriously important in how
Yeah.
much joy a person has in their life. And codependence is not the pathway to joy. Thank you so much, Cathi, for that.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Pat. Thanks, everyone.
For those of you out there, you know what we're talking about. And I will tell you, I have 5 coaches. I don't get here every day without them. Cathi is a phenomenal coach. She integrates the spiritual nature of this. And please know that whatever that means to you, that's what we do. Cathi will meet you where you are. Thank you all. Thank you, Cathi. Thank you, Emily, for pushing all the right buttons. We'll see you all next time. Thank you for listening to Our Soul Whisper with Cathi and Dr. Pat. Tune in every first and third Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific on transformationtalkradio.com and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Take a moment now to breathe in and reflect on today's message. If it brought you peace, clarity, or insight, let it settle in your heart, and maybe even journal about it. Remember to like and share this episode with someone who's ready to listen within. May our soulful echoes ripple outward, awakening awareness and deep remembrance. If this show touched something within you, share it. Let's create a world where most of us pause, listen inward, and allow our light to shine. Visit OurSoulWhisper.com for more.